Hello, sociology scholars. Mrs. Olson here. Today's lesson is titled Approaches to Crime Control and falls within our unit, Deviance and Crime. Now, before we begin, I want to remind everyone that it is always a good idea to take notes. So you can either take out a piece of paper and a writing utensil or open up a word processing program and record information that you deem is important to remember. Of course, you can always use these notes on the lesson questions that typically follow a video lesson. Now, beginning with the learning target, it reads that you will be able to explain the different approaches to controlling crime. So as we go along through this lesson, you are going to learn that there are four different approaches that we're going to look at from crime control and the sociological lens. Okay, beginning with the first slide, before we get to the approaches, we are going to talk about the criminal justice system. The definition of the criminal justice system is here. It is a group of institutions and processes responsible for enforcing criminal statutes. You can think of statutes as laws. So, the three parts to the criminal justice system include the police, the courts, and a correctional system. So if someone commits a crime, they are apprehended by the police. That alleged criminal then is either goes into our court system. So they are either deemed innocent or guilty. And then depending on the crime, there is a punishment that is awarded. I'll say it like that. There is a punishment that is instituted, and they can either go into the correctional system or some variation of the correctional system. So, again, we are going to look at how we control crime in the United States by looking at four different approaches. Okay, now this is just a graphic that represents the three parts to the criminal justice system, that being the police, the courts, and corrections. Good idea probably to write this down if you can't remember. So either pause the video or hurry up and write, as I am going to go to the next slide. Okay, so there are four different approaches, and the first one that we are going to discuss is deterrence. So, deterrence, the definition reads that it uses the threat of punishment to discourage criminal action. The basic idea with deterrence, so think of deterrence as preventing, it stops, it deters. The basic idea is that the punishment that the convicted criminal receives, it's going to serve as an example of what can happen if said person commits a crime. So it's going to prevent that criminal hopefully from doing it again, or if other people understand the punishment that that person received, they will be less likely to commit the same offense. Some studies suggest that the threat of deterrence does reduce crime. That is the idea. So, capital punishment is a form of deterrence. Now, before we get into capital punishment, I do want to note that we are going to look at capital punishment as a special case. So once again, it falls underneath the category or the approach of deterrence, but we're going to look at it as a separate case on a different slide. So in case you are unfamiliar with the term capital punishment, the definition is the legally authorized killing of someone as punishment for a crime. So we're going to be looking at a few statistics. First one being that the United States started keeping records of capital punishment starting in 1930. So since 1930, there have been 6,000 people that have been executed as the punishment for their crime since 1930. Okay, now from these years, 1976 to 2012, the statistics are that the vast majority were 77% white male. Within this time period, 15% were African American, and then 7% were Latinx, which is kind of a newer phrase for Latinos, or a newer name for the group named Latino. Okay, our next note reads that the murder rate remains constant or even drops following a decline in the use of the death penalty. So, you want to ask yourself a question with these statistics. Is capital punishment a deterrent? If this information is saying that when states stop using or don't use the death penalty as much, they actually see a drop in the murder rate, or it just stays about the same. Okay, so these are questions that you want to ask when you are looking at these real life situations through the sociological lens. 35% of Americans believe that the death penalty is a deterrent. And our last note on this slide says, of those that favor, 69% indicate. So out of this 35% that believe that the death penalty is a deterrent, 69% of this 35 say that they would continue to favor the death penalty even if new evidence showed that the death penalty does not deter murder. So think about this for just a moment, and if we were sitting in a classroom together, or even in a virtual Zoom meeting together, what would you have to say about this statistic? Sociologists have found that feelings of revenge and a desire for retribution, another word that means retribution is vengeance, those feelings appear to contribute more to support capital punishment than its actual deterrent effects. Okay, so I am going to end the video lesson / slideshow at this point in time, so we can consider this part 1 of approaches to crime control, and you can tune in for part 2.